Hello, I'm Andy Mock with CATS. I'm the Senior Project Manager for the Link Silverline project. Thank you for attending the sixth and final public meeting for the Silverline. This meeting is focused on Union County in the section between Matthews and Indian Trail. Public meetings 1 through 5 focus on everything from the west side in Belmont, the whole way through Center City, Charlotte, and terminated at the Union County line in Matthews. They're available on our YouTube page if you'd like to watch any of those other videos. Before we get into the overview video and the rest of the program tonight, just to give a very brief overview of what the Silverline is, and then there'll be some follow-up information on some videos and other information that we'll provide. So the Silverline is a transformational 26-mile light rail project which spans from Belmont through Gaston County through the city of Charlotte and ends at CPCC with the potential extension in Union County. That's what we're talking about tonight. Before we start the meeting, I suggest that you go to our website. That's www.ridetransit.org/link-silverline to follow along, and also to be able to provide comments and to use our virtual online map to as you can pan around and look at the other alternatives and design options that we're currently considering. Next slide. So for our panelists, here's some notes after this is our 6th time. So the 5 other times we've learned a couple things. Panelists, please remain on mute until the QA portion of the meeting. Participants, please log into your Gmail or your YouTube account to participate in the live Q&A. Log off any organizational VPNs for better performance. And post your questions in the chat box to be answered at the end of the meeting. Very brief agenda. We're going to show you a brief project overview video, which shows the definition of what the Silverline is and kind of the status and process we're going through. Then we're going to do a focus area presentation where I'll actually walk all the participants through the online public engagement materials that we've put on for review. And then we're going to do a live Q&A from our panel focused on the information that we just presented. Hello, I'm Andy Mock, the Link Silverline Senior Project Manager. This video is the first in a series of videos and will provide an overview of the proposed Link Silverline light rail project. We are currently in the transportation planning or pre-project development phase of work, and we are conducting early scoping in coordination with the Federal Transit Administration, referred to as FTA. We will discuss more about early scoping later on, as well as provide you with an update on progress since March of 2020 and explain how you can provide input. I'd like to introduce you to our project team. First, leading the Link Silverline Light Rail project is myself and Jenna Nichols, the Deputy Project Manager. Ajanel Poole is the CATS Public and Community Relations Specialist dedicated to the project. The Link Silverline Light Rail is part of a larger community program which includes related but separate studies. The Transit-Oriented Development Study, referred to as TOD, as well as our Rail Trail Study. John Howard is the project manager for the TOD study, and Jason Lawrence is the project manager for the Rail Trail Project Study. There will be more to come on the TOD and Rail Trail planning in the future, but today, as a part of early scoping, we are focused on the light rail project. Now that you've met the team, let's talk about the actual Link Silverline Light Rail project. The Link Silverline is a proposed 26-mile light rail project from the city of Belmont through Center City, Charlotte, and the town of Matthews with a potential extension into Union County. We are growing as a region, and coordination is key. Throughout the project, we will coordinate efforts with several other programs, agencies, and projects. Currently, CATS and FTA are conducting early scoping. Yes, we recognize it's a very technical term, but essentially it means that we are seeking your feedback on the ongoing planning analysis to better define the project before entering project development in the National Environmental Policy Act, referred to as NEPA. Let's talk about how we got to this point. Rapid transit has been discussed in Charlotte for decades. In 1998, the City of Charlotte prepared the 2025 Integrated Transit Land Use Plan, which proposed using rapid transit to support focusing future growth in Charlotte's key centers and corridors. The West Corridor along Wilkinson Boulevard and the Southeast Corridor along Independence Boulevard were two of the identified corridors. Additional planning efforts have occurred, and the plan is now referred to as the 2030 Transit System Plan. In 2016, CATS completed the Southeast Corridor Transit Study, which considered various transit technologies and alignments. The study included a detailed technical evaluation and extensive public and stakeholder engagement. Our policy board, referred to as the Metropolitan Transit Commission, or MTC, adopted an LPA, short for Locally Preferred Alternative, for a light rail project in the 13-mile Southeast Corridor from Center City, Charlotte, to the Mecklenburg and Union County border. More recently, CATS completed the Link System Update, which studied various technologies and alignment alternatives for the West Corridor and Center City, Charlotte. In February 2019, the MTC adopted a light rail LPA for the West Corridor and combined it with the Southeast Corridor LPA to make one continuous 26-mile light rail corridor from Belmont to Matthews, with a potential extension into Union County, known as the Link Silver Line. Now we are assessing new opportunities and risks in order to refine the LPA and help determine the alignment and options that may be carried forward into environmental review under NEPA. During the early scoping process, we start to develop the purpose and need statement, which is consistent with previously identified public and stakeholder goals. The purpose and need statement defines the fundamental reason why the project is being proposed, and it's the foundation for the environmental review process. The needs are the why the proposed action is needed, and the purpose is the what CATS intends to accomplish. The purpose and need will be refined during planning and through environmental review, with additional input from the public, stakeholders, and regulatory agencies. This screen shows identified preliminary transportation needs in the Link Silver Line corridor. The preliminary purpose of the Link Silver Line project is to provide high-capacity transit service in dedicated right-of-way along identified roadways that address the desired transportation outcome shown on the screen. The full preliminary purpose and need statement is available in the online open house. Let us know if you have any comments in the online survey, also available in the online open house. You may be asking yourself, why are we refining the alignment if it was adopted by the MTC, the CATS Policy Board? Although some of the alignment was adopted in 2019, the Southeast Corridor was adopted in 2016. Just think about how much of our infrastructure changed in the region over the last 4 years. In that time, a lot of construction has occurred. We opened the Link's Blue Line extension and have learned so much that we can bring to this project. Additionally, we will be conducting additional engineering and environmental evaluations to learn more about the corridor and continue asking for your input. Now that you know why we are looking at refinements, let's talk about the decision-making process. We want to maximize the benefits of the proposed project while minimizing the risks. We're evaluating many factors as we refine the LPA, again, the locally preferred alternative, including public input, design constraints, environmental considerations, a quality rider experience, coordination with other projects, and land use surrounding the potential stations. We have developed several alignment refinement options for your review. These options may enhance benefits or address risks associated with the LPA. However, the alignment options also have their own pros and cons, as described in the interactive comment map on the online open house. As referenced earlier, we have been and will continue to think about environmental resources as we refine the LPA and move into environmental review under NEPA. We are looking for your feedback on the environmental considerations that we have identified and whether there are more to consider. Overall, we're asking you to provide input on a number of critical factors. Since the corridor is quite long, at approximately 26 miles, we have broken it up into 6 focus areas. You can get more detailed information about the alignment options within each focus area by using the interactive comment map in the online open house. There are short videos that describe pros and cons of the alignment options for each focus area. Please review the videos at your convenience, available in the online open house from August 31st to October 14th. Once you review all the information, let us know what you think. There are a number of ways you can provide your input. Browse around the online open house to learn more about the project. Leave comments on the interactive comment map and take the public survey. We are hosting live virtual public meetings on September 15th, 16th, 17th, 22nd, 24th, and 29th at 5:30 p.m. Each of these meetings will include this general project overview, plus a more detailed discussion on one of the focus areas. Check the project website, ridetransit.org/linkssilverline, to learn more about how you can access the meetings and the focus areas that will be featured in each one. Additionally, you can request a virtual meeting with our team for your business or neighborhood group by contacting us via email at linksilverline@publicinput.com or the CATS customer service via phone at 704-336-RIDE. That's 704-336-7433. If you prefer to submit a hard copy of your comments, you can send a letter to CATS, care of Agenel Pool, at 600 East 4th Street, Charlotte, North Carolina, 28202. Public comments must be submitted by October 14th, as we will conclude the early scoping period. The feedback we receive from you will help us make decisions as we move into next steps. In 2021, the team plans to have a refined LPA that we will present for adoption by the MTC and carry forward into the detailed NEPA environmental review process. Prior to adoption by the MTC, we will conduct another round of public meetings to share our recommendations. Depending on the public and agency input, there may be more than one option in certain locations. Thank you for joining us today, and thank you in advance for sharing your input with us. Your feedback will help to shape and create a light rail line that will serve our region for many generations to come. Thank you, everyone, for your attention on that video. I'm just now going to walk through some of our online materials that we put up for early scoping. Kind of show you how to get there, how to get to these locations, and also how you can provide public input through this public engagement process and where you can find a virtual online material. So a great starting place is the CATS homepage, which is www.ridetransit.org. And if you go to the Link Silverline tab, then that will take you to this website right here, or it'll give you a kind of an overview. It's kind of a gateway to the online open house. But if you want to go down and kind of read more about some of the benefits of the Link Silverline, some of the connections that you will be able to make through the Silverline project, it's here, along with some definitions of some of the technical terms we're using, pre-project development, scoping, those sort of things, and then a map, and also information about the other public meetings. Now, this is the last one, so the other ones really don't apply, but there's also a link to get to the YouTube page if you'd like to watch those from the past. So if you were to go to start here and click on this online open house tab, it would take you to the main public engagement tool that we developed for this virtual process. The first landing page is really this kind of project overview tab on the top left side here. And that provides you a some videos kind of giving you some very high level overview of what the project is and how you can provide engagement. Another map, the same video that we watched, you just watched a minute ago, is on here. So if you'd like to watch that again to refresh your memory, along with some a nice flow chart showing all the project history and all the previous studies that we used to kind of come up with the locally preferred alternative and the alignments that we're evaluating. So if you want to kind of follow along with this, kind of showing you from way back when we got the integrated transit land use plan in 1998 through the various system updates, now ultimately up to now where we are, which is refining the LPA through this process. Also, if you'd like to get into the details, you can also read the reports, download these reports here, so you can kind of get comfortable with those. There's also a lot of good information about the preliminary purpose and need, very important process and very important language that we develop as we go more into a federal environmental process. So this is very important for us. So please take a moment to review this and also provide any sort of comments through the survey tool, which I'll go through in a moment. And so again, more kind of environmental language and overview of some of the alternatives and how we kind of got here. And then another kind of description of all the environmental consideration that we'll be looking at through this process as this project marches on through, as the locally preferred alternative is refined. We'll be evaluating the final LPA against impacts to energy or safety, security, utilities, those sorts of things. And then a nice little timeline showing you kind of where we are and all the activities we're doing during this early stage, and then moving into the next stage of project development, which is when we kind of more formally enter into the Federal Transit Administration process. All along, undergirded by public engagement is kind of the main tool how we get there. So once you kind of go through that overview, you kind of get a kind of an overview of where we are. Next good thing to do is to go through the virtual online map, and this is probably the lion's share what most people want to see and care about, and this is what most of the program is going to be about tonight. So the best way to navigate this tool is really using the right side, this gray bar. So if you want to zoom out or zoom in, this gray bar will take you to certain places or map extents. We're on the last one, so it would be the bottom button. Also, there's this box right here, this white box, also provides a lot of good information about what it is we're trying to accomplish. So really, that we lead with each one of these focus areas with the question of, should the link silver line extend into Indian Trail? Extend to Indian Trail. That's kind of the question that we're evaluating. So there's some language in here about how, some details about that. Also, and I'll get into some of this in a moment, this is kind of shows the alignment alternatives that or the options we're going to evaluate in a moment. There's also a video that we did, which is basically a voiceover video of us panning over these areas. So if you'd like to, refresh your memory on any of the stuff, all the pros and cons, it'll be all on this video. But to kind of get into the weeds, let me kind of go through the alternatives or the design options that we have today. Now, I will say, Focus Area 6 is a little different than all the other focus areas because there is no locally preferred alternative in this area. Back in 2019, the Metropolitan Transit Commission identified a kind of a desire to study an alignment that goes in Union County, but there is no locally preferred alternative that terminates at CPCC right here. So all the other focus areas have a starting place, and that is the purple line is the LPA. So we're through this process, we intend to adopt a new LPA. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk through some of the options that are on the table so you can kind of understand the finer points of them. And then that allows you some information you can provide your comments. And that will help us identify the appropriate locally preferred alternative moving forward. So starting here at I-485, the purple line is the LPA. The yellow line are design options to the LPA that were evaluated for different reasons. I'll start with the top alignment, which comes off of the LPA, crosses Campus Ridge Road, and parallels CPCC Lane. This alignment then kind of turns and then follows Independence Boulevard or Guillen Lane, and bridges over Stallings Road. And this is right at the edge of the Independence Freeway section. And then this is also where the hospital, the new hospital, Atrium Hospital, is under construction. I'm not sure exactly when it's opening, but it's in this location. We intend to have a station in this area, exactly where this dot shows it here, but it could be any number of places. And it's also, we think it's a good location for a park and ride somewhere in this area because there's so much traffic on Stallings and Independence Boulevard that we feel like we could really pick up a lot of park and ride customers who want to get out of their car and get on the train. It then continues to follow along Independence Boulevard, and then turns and parallels Chestnut Parkway, which takes you right down to Indian Trail Town Hall with the station right here. So if we were to go into our pros and cons, so at a high level, we went through the analysis and kind of identified the kind of at a high level so the public could understand what are the pros and what are the cons of each one of the alignments so they could be compared against each other. So one of the pros of this one is that there's not many driveways that it's impacting. Or intersections. So we're able to kind of get through here, and that allows us to have more reliability of our train system So that's a good thing. Less driveways, less cross streets. That's great. It also, because it's along Independence, there's greater visibility for a park and ride. So if we build a parking garage in this area, it'd be very visible from Independence Boulevard and from Stallings Road, so people wouldn't have to look for it and they can easily find it, and it's a good incentive for them to get out of their vehicle. However, there's not as many connections to new development opportunities along this area. So it's kind of is what it is along Independence Boulevard at this point. There's also limited space for light rail along Chestnut Parkway. So there is a setback along Chestnut Parkway, but we don't think it's going to be sufficient. So there'd have to be some kind of a reimagining of what Chestnut Parkway could be if we were to go with this alignment. This also introduces this pretty severe curve in this area. So this curvy alignment would then force the light rail to slow down, and may increase our operating costs to maintain this curve. So that's one of the downsides of this alternative. So if we could look at an alternative that is similar, but maybe mitigates against some of those concerns, I'll kind of zoom in for a second. Everything else is the same on this alternative to the other, except for right after the hospital, the light rail comes across country and then parallels Matthews Indian Trail Road with a station near Indian Trail Town Hall, and that would be on the side of the road, on the northern, or I guess the northeastern side. So it's very similar up to there. It's just mitigates some of those issues. So from a high level, if we look at a lot of the things are the same as far as the pros and cons, especially in this area. So we don't have as many at-grade intersections or impacts to traffic, so that's a good thing. It does also, again, has a greater visibility for a park and ride, so folks can find us. And it provides a very direct access to Matthews, or to Indian Trail Town Hall. So it's right there, which is a good choice for us. But similar to the other one, it kind of misses some of the energy that seems to be happening along Matthews Indian Trail Road, and by being along Independence. So another option to that, which we're calling option 2, and this has been discussed with some of the, all these have been discussed with town staff and with some of the folks at Atrium. So there's been a lot of talk about these options. So this one, similar along the terminus, extending from the terminus across Campus Ridge, along CPCC Lane. But then instead of going along Independence, it then goes to the right and parallels Matthews Indian Trail Road, and then bridges over Stallings Road. These two lines are just indicate different kind of configuration options. We're not saying there's two separate alignments. There's two tracks, but they're not two separate guideways. Just to clarify that. With a station near Stallings Road, to serve the Atrium Hospital, along Matthews Indian Trail Road, with a station that's similar to that of the option 1B, which is right next to Indian Trail Town Hall. So for pros and cons, the big pro is that it really kind of captures some of the energy that seems to be happening with the station at Stallings Road, and Stallings and Matthews Indian Trail Road is seems like a lot of things happening with the hospital and some of the redevelopment opportunities there. So it provides a pretty good opportunity to capitalize that and to serve that development. However, it does require the reconstruction and widening of Matthews Indian Trail Road. So part of this would be a widening of the street to actually incorporate light rail into the side or the center. It would also potentially reroute driveways and side streets. So we would have to figure out how the access would work along this area. So we might have to rebuild driveways and side street and reconfigure them. And if we were to build a park and ride for the station, it wouldn't be quite as visible for the folks on Independence Boulevard. So that's kind of at a high level as folks are thinking about the alternatives in these separate alignments, kind of just a way to kind of think about some of the the way that we're looking at these from a pro and con list, and help you understand what we're talking about, and also, maybe inform you as you're commenting and reviewing these. But as we go down further and talk about public engagement process, so this is the video I talked about. You feel free to watch that in your free time. We also have the comment form. Every focus area has its own comment form. You can kind of put in your information, your priorities about what's more important to you in this focus area. Some people have different priorities in different focus areas, so that's why we kind of did like this. But if you're concerned about travel time and you're getting a fast trip to downtown, then you might have one priority versus cost, maybe a different priority, or redevelopment might be a third priority. And then finally, under the Tell Us More tab, this is the main the main survey that we're putting out. And so again, this survey is will be up till October 14th, 2020. And once we close early scoping, we'll take that down. And so if you click on that tab on the bottom, it'll then take you directly to this public survey website where you can put in your information and provide some more, some high-level commentary on the purpose and need. And, if you have any other ideas for some other options that we should look at, put that there. Do you agree with, any of the stuff we presented, and what's your area that you're most concerned about? And so please put that in there, and we'll respond to all those comments through the survey. So with that, I think I will now hand it back to Ajnal Poole, who will then facilitate a live Q&A with the panel, who can hopefully answer most of your questions.
Thank you, Andy. One moment. Thank you, Andy, and thank you everyone that is joining us today. As Andy said, my name is Ajnal Poole. I am the Community and Public Relations Specialist for this project. We appreciate everyone that took the time out to attend this virtual public meeting tonight. As with our other public meetings, I'm sure this is not the preferred method to share information, but with everything going on, we are adapting to what is making sure that we are giving information in the safest way as possible. So we appreciate everyone working with us as we adapt to this new normal. As Andy mentioned earlier, we're going to ask that the panelists please stay on mute until you're answering a question. I want to remind everyone that is watching, if you would like to ask a question, please sign into Gmail and YouTube and ask your question in the chat box. And like Andy mentioned earlier, we recommend signing off of any VPN or organizational servers just to have the best connection. We will be answering questions that we received during the session, as well as questions that we have received prior via phone call, email, or mail. We are going to do our best to get through all the questions that are asked tonight. And however, if your question is not gotten to tonight, please look for information on a Q&A document that will be available on the website. As a note, we are going to try to focus on focus area 6 tonight. And so with that, I am going to kick off our Q&A session with a frequently asked question that we have received a couple times, which is, one moment, I apologize. And I'm going to direct this one to Jenna, who is our Deputy Project Manager. Why is CATS evaluating an extension into Union County?
Thank you, Ajnal. So following the adoption of the locally preferred alternative by the Metropolitan Transit Commission in February of 2019, the town of Indian Trail issued a resolution in support of light rail transit. And that was presented to MTC in April 2019. That resolution indicated that more transportation options were needed to provide greater mobility to the region and to the residents and the rapidly growing population of Indian Trail and Union County. It also stated that Union County stakeholders were expressing a renewed interest in exploring rapid transit options into Mecklenburg County. And it requested that Metropolitan Transit Commission's locally preferred alternative for the Silver Line examine an extension eastward into the town of Indian Trail in Union County for a potential terminus station in Indian Trail. So that was the impetus to include that in our efforts.
Thanks, Jenna. And another question that we frequently get is, how will this project be funded?
Sure. CATS will develop cost estimates through the pre-project and project development phases as we further define the alignments. And once a more complete cost has been determined, that's when we'll start to determine some funding sources. It's our goal to follow a similar path as we did for the Lynx Blue Line and the Lynx Blue Line extension. Those projects were funded through a competitive federal grant program called New Starts. And we're going to pursue that same funding program for the Lynx Silver Line. That funding program does require local, and state matches with the federal funding. So just as the Blue Line projects did, we'll need to identify local funding sources. So on the local side, it will require us having a robust conversation with the public about how these projects will be funded.
Thanks, Jenna. A question that we received tonight: given that Union County sends 30,000 to 50,000 commuters a day into the Charlotte metro area and is one of Met County's largest sources of labor, why wouldn't you want to expand into Union County?
Yeah, so thank you. So I mean, that is the purpose of this exercise. This planning study is to evaluate the benefits of serving Union County. Seems to make sense at a high level. Those statistics, are compelling. But we have to make sure that we're providing the appropriate service for Union County. Is it, are people in Union County really just want to commute, or is there all day service requested or needed? So I think we're really kind of looking at what is the right and appropriate kind of service we can provide to Union County to serve the needs of the county. It certainly, it seems like there's a lot of interest, and we want to kind of respond to that interest and provide the appropriate amount of service to Union County. But every one of these alternatives has a trade-off that needs to be weighed. So that's the kind of process we're doing now.
Jason, would you like to add on to that?
Yeah, sure. I thought this would be a good moment to bring up that CATS is partnering with the Central Carolina Regional Council and a regional transit plan that goes across 12 counties in 2 states. Union County is a part of that. And in that conversation, certainly those 30 to 50,000 commuters that you're talking about have all sorts of potential transit needs into Mecklenburg County. And that regional transit plan called Connect Beyond is looking at high capacity transit corridors in Union County, but also looking at potential bus services and human services transportation. So there's 2 efforts going on in Union County, the Connect Beyond effort, as well as the Lynx Silver Line analysis.
Thank you, Jason. Another question we received this evening: with the various options with pros and cons, how do you form a criteria to select an option? Would the criteria be different or the same for each section of the line?
Yeah, that's a great question. So early in this process, we've kind of had a focus on what we call the benefits and risk decision framework. It's shown in the video, and I can briefly talk about that. But that's a good observation about, different parts of the alignment may have different priorities. And so the priorities in Matthews or Stallings or Indian Trail or the city of Charlotte, are likely to be different. So that's part of the kind of the conversation we have with all of our stakeholders about how to kind of weight some of the inputs that we use to that decision making. Just at a high level, the 3 benefits that we're trying to evaluate: one, a design option versus the locally preferred alternative is, we want a fast, reliable travel time for the light rail. And we want to have we want to promote equitable transit-oriented development. We want to foster development around our stations. And we want to make sure that local access is very good to our stations and to the community for, work, education, other options that are around our stations that we can provide service to. But we want to weigh that against risks, because we want to make sure we're putting out a project forward that can compete for federal funds and is moving more towards an implementation mode. So we're going to compare that to, environmental risks, because we are seeking to pursue federal funding, and that requires a detailed environmental evaluation. Capital and operating costs are going to be critical for us to weigh and measure to ensure that we can actually put forward a project that we can, operate, maintain, and pay for. And we want to make sure that we are well coordinated with any third-party projects that may be directly adjacent, like NCDOT, railroads, other big projects that may be directly adjacent to us. We need to make sure we're well coordinated with them. And so that's the way that we look at each option versus another, is how does it weigh up, or how does it measure up against one another in that framework.
Thank you, Andy. On these videos, you often mention additional pros and cons not listed, like additional costs for the curve. I assume this is for simplicity's sake for the site. Is there a place I can find the full list?
So that is basically the pros and cons list, is for the most part the benefits and risks framework. We took the benefits, and I agree, the benefits and risks, what we're using is more detailed than the simplicity's sake. We tried to really kind of look at each one of the alignment options that compared to each other to see if they were distinguishing. So does it really matter? Is one that much more expensive than the other, or does it, the curve that much more than another option, to see if there's really distinguishing? That's why we kind of identified that curve, because that's the biggest curve on this particular option. So there are that benefits and risks framework is kind of available in our project website through the video. We shared that a minute ago. So I think that's publicly available.
Thank you, Andy. I'm also going to remind all of our viewers, if you would like to ask the project team a question, please log into your YouTube or Gmail account and leave it in the chat box, and we will get to it. I have a frequently asked question that we get that I'm going to direct back to Jenna Nichols, which is, why is the Link Silver Line not going directly into the airport term?
Thanks, Ajanel. So how we often think about projects like this, like the Silver Line, it's a multi-generational 50 to 100-year project. And, that kind of investment, we need to, keep in mind growth that will happen over those 50 to 100 plus years. And so when we think about the Charlotte Airport of today, it's likely not that Charlotte Airport of the future. It will also continue to grow and expand. The Silver Line will have a premium light rail station at the airport that supports the airport's future land use and development plans. The station will be designed so that passengers that arrive by light rail feel as if they've arrived directly at the airport terminal, because it will be located at a multimodal center that functions like an extension of the main terminal. Which means it will have signage similar to the main terminal. It will have terminal services such as baggage check and ticketing. You'll feel as if you've arrived at the airport. From that multimodal transportation center, passengers will hop on a quick and direct people mover that will take them right into the terminal.
Thank you, Jenna. Another question we received this evening. Not trying to sound critical, but why does it seem to take so long to get to construction? As an example, the I-45 Express Lane project went from idea to construction relatively quickly compared to the Silver Line.
Yeah, so I'm not sure about the I-45 Express Lane project, so I can't really speak to that, but I will say I worked on the other two light rail projects within the city of Charlotte, the CATS projects, the Blue Line and Blue Line extension. And it does take a while because these projects are very big and very complicated, not just the technical nuts and bolts of the track and systems and all that other stuff that goes with it, but all the environmental requirements, federal processes that need to be done real estate acquisition. So, there's a process for everything. So I promise you, we we work to try to deliver these projects as quickly as possible. But because of the size and complexity of them and the likely federal requirements that go with the funding of it, it just takes a while. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I can assure you we have a team of people who are pushing these projects forward as fast as possible.
Thank you, Andy. I have two similar questions that I'm going to read, and I think this would be a good one for Jason. The first one is, will Monroe or Wingate be part of the light rail service? What time frame are we looking at? And the second question is, will there ever be a section connecting the Waxhaw area, even if it means connecting at some other town to change trains? So I think this is a good one about the regional transit plan.
Sure. Great. Thank you, Anjanelle. And yes, as part of the Connect Beyond Regional Transit Initiative, we are looking at all those corridors that would connect those communities. We're evaluating the potential for commuter rail on CSX, high capacity transit corridors on Highway 74, and the toll lane project, roads like 601, Highway 16, looking at all those types of corridors for the potential for high capacity transit, be it bus rapid transit or light rail transit. If you go to connect-beyond.com, there is a map on there currently where you can enter comments and provide feedback on the current thinking for corridors within Union County. And we'd be happy to, we'll be doing public outreach in Union County and all the counties as a part of that effort. So that's an ongoing conversation. The Silver Line is looking at the Indian Trail and Stylings, and the Regional Transit Plan is looking at the rest of the county.
Thank you, Jason. How likely is the Union County extension to happen to Indian Trail? I also believe Monroe needs an extension, if not now, then longer term, to provide a more efficient transportation option than a bus service.
All right. Go ahead, Jason. This is probably more up your alley.
Yeah, I think, if we think about all the different types of trips that need to occur within Union County, that there's opportunities to look at, bus rapid transit, look at commuter rail, and of course we're looking at Indian Trail and Stylings right now. So I think to answer the question of the extension or other services to Monroe, I think that's a part of that regional conversation, which we're accepting comments on right now. And it's our goal to have those recommendations for all those high capacity transit corridors early next year.
Thank you, Jason. Will there be a pedestrian and bicycle link from Indian Trail across 485 to Matthews if the Silver Line is extended to Indian Trail?
Sure. Thanks, Anjanelle. And yes, the third part of the Silver Line effort, combined with the design services and the Link Silver Line TOD study, there's also a rail trail study that's looking at the entire 26 miles of where we can fit a pedestrian and bike facility to parallel the entire alignment where possible. And so we're coordinating with the towns and also with the design team to make sure that experience can occur. So that is a part of this effort right now.
Thank you, Jason. I'm going to go to some of the frequently asked questions that we have received. Can one of you all describe what early scoping is and why we are doing it?
Sure. So early scoping is a process that we go through that the FTA often recommends on large projects to really get that early feedback from all the federal agencies and partners, including local partners, who are going to weigh in and be part of the approval and permitting of this project. So as you can imagine, a project of this nature and scale will We'll need permits from, say, the Fish and Wildlife. So we'll need to verify that there's, no endangered species in the area that we're building, and that there's any water resource that will take a permitting process as well. Also, the local towns are also part of that as well. They were part of the early scoping process. So this is really a project of this size. FTA often recommends that we go through a process like this to really kind of start vetting early, so that everyone has time to really think through the impacts of the project and understand it, so that it kind of expedites the permitting process later. It's really kind of the first step on a big project like this into the environmental process.
Thank you, Andy. Will I be able to take a train directly from Stallings to the Gateway Station to take Amtrak? Has the Silver Line team coordinated with the Southeast High-Speed Rail Corridor Plan to enhance service to a future high-speed rail option to Charlotte?
That's a great question. Yeah, so you will be able to take it from, if we build the light rail the whole way to Indian Trail, you will be able to take a train from Stallings to Charlotte Gateway Station, where the Amtrak station is currently being constructed. We are working the NCDOT rail team as part of our coordination team. So we're meeting with the appropriate folks at NCDOT rail all the time. We have a long history of working with NCDOT rail on the Southeast High-Speed Rail project. That project was also under planning whenever we were designing the Blue Line extension. So we have a good understanding of what that project is. And so I feel like they will be well coordinated with that team moving forward.
Thank you, Andy. Another frequently question that we get concerns about traffic. Will traffic be a concern during the building of this project, if someone wants to touch on that topic?
So I think that comment is about traffic impacts of construction. And there certainly will be some traffic impacts of construction, assuming we are within or adjacent to a road. So if we're inserting a light rail into a street of any kind, it will require the construction or reconstruction in some way of that road. So maintenance of traffic will be a big priority for us. So we'll have our designers and engineers will be design maintenance of traffic plans so that we can ensure that traffic can keep moving. However, anytime you're rebuilding a road, there will be impacts to traffic. That's just the nature of it. And there will be dirt and dust, and we'll do our best to keep it clean and keep things moving. But I think the nature of the project this size there will be some traffic impacts during construction.
Thank you, Andy. Another question we received this evening: might a maintenance facility be located in Union County if the line serves that area?
Well, that's something we're evaluating. So we're looking at options. One of the early tasks we're trying to determine is where a maintenance facility might go. We certainly will need one. We haven't identified any specific sites yet. So I think that's something that we'll be, looking at and evaluating as we go on. So I guess possibly if we can find a suitable site in Union County that meets our needs, then yeah, maybe.
Thank you, Andy. Again, I want to encourage all of our viewers. We have a few more minutes left. If you have any questions you want to ask the project team, please put them in the YouTube chat box. I have a frequently asked question that I think would be a good one for John Howard, who's leading our TOD effort. How and when will station locations be chosen?
Thank you, Ajanelle. So as Andy mentioned before, we have a transit-oriented development study that's running kind of parallel to this design effort. And when the final alignment is selected early next year, the TOD team will then start station area planning along the entire 26 miles. And part of that effort will include education about what TOD means. It's not a one-size-fits-all. When a lot of people think about transit, they think about the Blue Line and South End. But understanding that in this 26 miles with 3 different jurisdictions, not every station will be the same. There'll be different contexts, there'll be different community goals, different land use policies to look at. So we'll be communicating with the public often the next year or two about what those goals are, and talk about land use, talk about what makes stations function properly in terms of having enough connections, talking about the right land use mix, talk about, again, infrastructure and how to make these stations really operate properly. So we'll be kicking that off in earnest early next year.
Thank you, John. We have another frequently asked question, which is, will there be a lot of railroad interaction with this project?
Yeah, so there will definitely be some railroad interaction, freight railroad with this, depending on the options that we pursue. It's absolutely, there'll be at least 2 to 3 crossings of the CSX railroad in certain locations. And there will be a crossing. When I say a crossing, it would be either an aerial crossing over or a crossing under, no at-grade crossings, meaning we won't cross the freight railroad at the same elevation. So there will be certainly some of CSX, and there will be at least one of Norfolk Southern near Center City. So yes.
Thanks, Andy. A question we received this evening: might there be increased bus service connecting the rest of Union County to Silver Line stations for people who might not want to drive to the park and ride, but don't live close enough to the line to walk?
Thank you, Janelle. I can take that. So, just like the Lynx Blue Line and the Blue Line extension, we CATS at a bus rail integration plan. And so this project, in partnership with the Connect Beyond effort, will be developing something similar for the entire line. So we would do that in Gaston County all the way through Charlotte and Matthews, and of course, well in Union County, because each station will need to have those bus connections. So we'll have to look for places for buses to stage, for bus stop. Transit amenities would be all part of that conversation. So yes, we will develop a bus rail integration plan.
Thank you, Jason. How would a Silver Line extension to Union County affect the potential for future commuter rail to Union County?
So I don't think that the two necessarily aren't completely related at this point. I think we think about that's more of a question of trip purpose. Commuter rail is typically for longer haul type of trips. And so, I think you're 20, you're 30, you're 50 miles out, maybe from the city center in downtown Charlotte, is more suited for commuter rail. Whereas, light rail is, for that 10 to 15 mile kind of trip purpose. So I think it's too soon to tell for all that. We're still in the early stages with the regional plan, and commuter rail is going to be part of that conversation in a regional sense across all 12 counties.
Thank you, Jason. I believe that we answered all the questions that we received this evening. So I am going to ask one more question before we wrap up our Q&A for the evening. And it's also a frequently asked question that we received, which is, what are the next steps after MTC adoption? And that will be our last question for the evening.
So the process moving forward is after I'll talk a little bit about where we are. So we're in the process after this, we're presenting these options to the public, and then receiving input. Then we'll go through that and evaluate those along with some of our other details for how we look at these, and then come back to the public in the early 21 timeframe, where we present the refined locally preferred alternative. We have several options right now, and we're striving to get down to one option to get public input on, then to take that back to the Metropolitan Transit Commission for adoption in early 21. So once we get that adoption, then the next step is really to move into the 15% engineering phase. And so we start to get into, now that we've identified the alignment we want to pursue, we'll start to get into a little bit more detailed look of what that alignment is. And so start getting into more of the engineering phase, and then continue to refine that engineering, moving into the environmental process, and hopefully into the federal pipeline.
So it sounds like that's the end of our questions. Ajnal, oh, perfect. Thank you. Okay, well, so thank you all for attending tonight. I hope everybody learned some good information and felt like this was a valuable process and a good use of your time. We'll be compiling all of the comments and questions that we've received tonight into a document and and we'll be addressing them and then posting that on our website. The website is, you can see it on the screen here, it's ridetransit.org/links-silverline. And that's also where you can go and review the alignments and see the stuff that Andy had presented and make your comments, provide feedback. Just a reminder that early scoping, that comment period ends October 14th. And at that time, the mapping tool that we shared tonight, that will no longer be available after October 14th. So make sure you get there and make some comments and check it out. You can also send us an email if you have any questions at linkssilverline@publicinput.com, or you can give us a call at 704-336-RIDE. That's 704-336-7433. Or you can send us a letter to CATS, care of Ms. Ajna Poole, 600 East 4th Street, Charlotte, North Carolina, 28202. Again, thank you all for your time and your focus tonight, and we appreciate all of the great comments and your time. Please stay tuned and stay involved. You can find out project updates at our project website, again, ridetransit.org/linkssilverline. And just really, we want to emphasize how important it is to us to get your feedback. It's really critical in helping us make the right decisions moving forward. So thank you.
Hello. Thank you for attending round 2 of the Link Silverline virtual public meetings. This public meeting is going to be focused on Focus Area 3, which is Center City, Charlotte. I'm Andy Mock. I'm with CATS, and I'm the Senior Project Manager for the Link Silverline. The Silverline is a transformational light rail project which spans from Belmont through Center City onto the town of Matthews and potentially beyond into Union County. It's critical that we receive your input as the project begins and progresses through the early stages so we can make the wisest decisions possible and as we define the project moving forward. Because this project is so large, we've broken into 6 separate focus areas. Of course, tonight's focus area is going to be on Focus Area 3. The previous 2 meetings, we had Focus Area 1 in Belmont. Focus Area 2 was at the airport. That was last night. And we have upcoming public meetings next week on Focus Area 4, which is Independence Boulevard, and Focus Area 5, which is Monroe Road in Matthews. And then Focus Area 6 is in Union County. I would recommend that folks, if you would like to follow along with some of the presentation, to go to our website. That's www.ridetransit.org/linkssilverline. And I'm going to be running through that website as the presentation goes on. It might help if you'd like to follow along. So just a couple notes. We've been having a couple meetings and they've been going pretty well, but some technical notes. Panelists, please remain on mute until the Q&A portion of the meeting. We'll call on you if there's any questions that are best answered by you or your organization. Participants, please log in with your Gmail or your YouTube account to participate in the live Q&A. We've also noticed that the experience is better if you log off any organizational VPNs. Post questions in the chat and will be answered at the end of the meeting. So just a couple of brief overview of the agenda. So we're going to give a project overview. We'll watch a video that shows kind of the history of the Silver Line, kind of the status of where we are and where we're going. Then we'll give a demonstration and a presentation of the public engagement tool, which we call the online open house, and the story map that shows more detailed version of the alignments that we're presenting tonight. And also then we'll do a live Q&A session with the project team and stakeholders. With that, now we're going to go into the video and we'll come back with the presentation after the video. I'm Andy Mock, the Link Silverline Senior Project Manager. This video is the first in a series of videos and will provide an overview of the proposed Link Silverline Light Rail project. We are currently in the transportation planning or pre-project development phase of work, and we are conducting early scoping in coordination with the Federal Transit Administration, referred to as FTA. We will discuss more about early scoping later on, as well as provide you with an update on progress since March of 2020, and explain how you can provide input. I'd like to introduce you to our project team. First, leading the Link Silverline Light Rail project is myself and Jenna Nichols, the Deputy Project Manager. Ajanelle Poole is the CATS Public and Community Relations Specialist dedicated to the project. The Link Silverline Light Rail is part of a larger community program which includes related but separate studies. The Transit-Oriented Development Study, referred to as TOD, as well as a rail trail study. John Howard is the project manager for the TOD study, and Jason Lawrence is the project manager for the rail trail project study. There will be more to come on the TOD and rail trail planning in the future, but today, as a part of early scoping, we are focused on the light rail project. Now that you've met the team, let's talk about the actual Link Silverline Light Rail project. The Link Silverline is a proposed 26-mile light rail project from the city of Belmont through Center City, Charlotte, and the town of Matthews, with a potential extension into Union County. We are growing as a region, and coordination is key. Throughout the project, we will coordinate efforts with several other programs, agencies, and projects. Currently, CATS and FTA are conducting early scoping. Yes, we recognize it's a very technical term, but essentially it means that we are seeking your feedback on the ongoing planning analysis to better define the project before entering project development in the National Environmental Policy Act, referred to as NEPA. Let's talk about how we got to this point. Rapid transit has been discussed in Charlotte for decades. In 1998, the City of Charlotte prepared the 2025 Integrated Transit Land Use Plan, which proposed using rapid transit to support focusing future growth in Charlotte's key centers and corridors. The West Corridor along Wilkinson Boulevard and the Southeast Corridor along Independence Boulevard were two of the identified corridors. Additional planning efforts have occurred, and the plan is now referred to as the 2030 Transit System Plan. In 2016, CATS completed the Southeast Corridor Transit Study, which considered various transit technologies and alignments. The study included a detailed technical evaluation and extensive public and stakeholder engagement. Our policy board, referred to as the Metropolitan Transit Commission, or MTC, adopted an LPA, short for Locally Preferred Alternative, for a light rail project in the 13-mile Southeast Corridor from Center City, Charlotte, to the Mecklenburg and Union County border. More recently, CATS completed the Link System Update, which studied various technologies and alignment alternatives for the West Corridor and Center City, Charlotte. In February 2019, the MTC adopted a light rail LPA for the West Corridor and combined it with the Southeast Corridor LPA to make one continuous 26-mile light rail corridor from Belmont to Matthews, with a potential extension into Union County, known as the Link Silverline. Now we are assessing new opportunities and risks in order to refine the LPA and help determine the alignment and options that may be carried forward into environmental review under NEPA. During the early scoping process, we start to develop the purpose and need statement, which is consistent with previously identified public and stakeholder goals. The purpose and needs statement defines the fundamental reason why the project is being proposed, and it's the foundation for the environmental review process. The needs are the why the proposed action is needed, and the purpose is the what CATS intends to accomplish. The purpose and need will be refined during planning and through environmental review, with additional input from the public, stakeholders, and regulatory agencies. This screen shows identified preliminary transportation needs in the Link Silver Line corridor. The preliminary purpose of the Link Silver Line project is to provide high-capacity transit service in dedicated right-of-way along identified roadways that address the desired transportation outcome shown on the screen. The full preliminary purpose and needs statement is available in the online open house. Let us know if you have any comments in the online survey, also available in the online open house. You may be asking yourself, why are we refining the alignment if it was adopted by the MTC, the CATS Policy Board? Although some of the alignment was adopted in 2019, the Southeast Corridor was adopted in 2016. Just think about how much of our infrastructure changed in the region over the last 4 years. In that time, a lot of construction has occurred. We opened the Link's Blue Line extension and have learned so much that we can bring to this project. Additionally, we will be conducting additional engineering and environmental evaluations to learn more about the corridor and continue asking for your input. Now that you know why we are looking at refinements, let's talk about the decision-making process. We want to maximize the benefits of the proposed project while minimizing the risks. We're evaluating many factors as we refine the LPA, again, the locally preferred alternative, including public input, design constraints, environmental considerations, a quality rider experience, coordination with other projects, and land use surrounding the potential stations. We have developed several alignment refinement options for your review. These options may enhance benefits or address risks associated with the LPA. However, the alignment options also have their own pros and cons, as described in the interactive comment map on the online open house. As referenced earlier, we have been and will continue to think about environmental resources as we refine the LPA and move into environmental review under NEPA. We are looking for your feedback on the environmental considerations that we have identified and whether there are more to consider. Overall, we're asking you to provide input on a number of critical factors. Since the corridor is quite long, at approximately 26 miles, we have broken it up into 6 focus areas. You can get more detailed information about the alignment options within each focus area by using the interactive comment map in the online open house. There are short videos that describe pros and cons of the alignment options for each focus area. Please review the videos at your convenience, available in the online open house from August 31st to October 14th. Once you review all the information, let us know what you think. There are a number of ways you can provide your input. Browse around the online open house to learn more about the project. Leave comments on the interactive comment map and take the public survey. We're hosting live virtual public meetings on September 15th, 16th, 17th, 22nd, 24th, and 29th at 5:30 p.m. Each of these meetings will include this general project overview, plus a more detailed discussion on one of the focus areas. Check the project website, ridetransit.org/linksilverline, to learn more about how you can access the meetings and the focus areas that will be featured in each one. Additionally, you can request a virtual meeting with our team for your business or neighborhood group by contacting us via email at linksilverline@publicinput.com or the CATS customer service via phone at 704-336-RIDE. That's 704-336-7433. If you prefer to submit a hard copy of your comments, you can send a letter to CATS, care of Agenel Pool, at 600 East 4th Street, Charlotte, North Carolina, 28202. Public comments must be submitted by October 14th, as we will conclude the early scoping period. The feedback we receive from you will help us make decisions as we move into next steps. In 2021, the team plans to have a refined LPA that we will present for adoption by the MTC and carry forward into the detailed NEPA environmental review process. Prior to adoption by the MTC, we will conduct another round of public meetings to share our recommendations. Depending on the public and agency input, there may be more than one option in certain locations. Thank you for joining us today, and thank you in advance for sharing your input with us. Your feedback will help to shape and create a light rail line that will serve our region for many generations to come. So thank you for your attention watching that overview video. It's a great way to get kind of, if you don't know much about CATS or the work that kind of led to the current Silver Line, it's a great way to kind of get oriented to that. I'm going to take a little bit of time because we're in the middle of really trying to do this public engagement to go through some of our online tools that we're using. First one I'm going to go through, and it's a good starting place, and it's the CATS website. It's www.ridetransit.org. And if you go there, it gives you a nice overview of where we are with a map, the status of the project and where we stand, the list of the upcoming public meetings, and kind of if you're if you're interested in Matthews and you would like to figure out what night to dial in for that, then you would say, okay, I'm interested in Matthews. That's focus area 5. That's from I-45 to Idlewild. So that would be this red area. So you would dial into the YouTube link over on the right side on Thursday night, September 24th at 5:30. So that's a great place to start. Also there is also the gateway to get into our online public engagement tool, which is the online open house. So that's at the top of the page. So if you click on that, it'll take you to the platform that we're using for this round 2 of public engagement, including early scoping. So this is the landing page, and this provides a little more information. It's kind of to ground the public and kind of where we're starting from. There's an online video with our CEO, John Lewis, and myself giving kind of some points about how public engagement will work, a narrative description of the Silver Line project, again, a nicer, probably a higher quality, a clearer map with focus areas, so that's nice to kind of have. Also some notations about the duration of the public comment period, which is August 31st through October 14th for early scoping. If you'd like to rewatch that video just to kind of refresh your memory, you could. That's the same video that we just saw is also on this website, along with kind of a timeline or a history of all the previous studies that led us to this point, leading back to the 1998-2025 Integrated Transit Land Use Plan, and up to today, where we're now into the alignment refinement process. We also have posted the previous studies, so if you'd like to get into the weeds and really kind of dig in and read about all the studies leading up to now, that's all in here, and so that's also a good thing for you to do if you're interested. We also posted our preliminary purpose and need that we referenced in the presentation, along with a little bit of a description of the environmental considerations that we're looking into at this point as we start to engage with our FTA, the Federal Transit Administration, through the NEPA, which is the National Environmental Policy Act. So that just kind of gives you a highlight of all the things we're going to be looking at as we start to evaluate these alternatives. And then a high-level project timeline, kind of letting you know kind of where we stand in the early FTA process, the planning, pre-project development, into project development, and some of the tasks we're going to be working on. So that's a kind of a good way to get started into this process and oriented into the project. The next tab, and the tabs are the kind of the primary way to get through it, is kind of the main tool. It's the main engagement. This is kind of what we've been calling the story map as part of the online open house. And this shows the Silver Line in its entirety. This shows the big map that goes the whole way from Belmont to Indian Trail. And just as a note, the best way to navigate this is this little gray bar on the right side and using this arrow. So if you're interested in, you just kind of use the arrows to go down. So if you're interested in focus area 1, 2, and you just kind of use this. Now we're on focus area 3. So I'll just click to there. So you can go down at your leisure. This is open and available to you anytime you'd like to visit it. A couple things to note. We also, this bar on the right side is probably the primary engagement tool in which we're using along with the map. And this is an interactive map. You can pan around and click on the lines, and they will show you some pros and cons, and I'll walk through that in a moment. But we lead each one of the focus areas with kind of a fundamental question, and the question in this area is like, how will the Lynx Silver Line enter Center City and interact with city streets and the Lynx Blue Line? So that's kind of the question we're trying to get at. The paragraph below is just kind of a verbal description of it, just to orient people, because there's lots of lines on here, just so people can stay focused. The purple line is always the locally preferred alternative. And just as a reminder, the locally preferred alternative was adopted by the Metropolitan Transit Commission in February of 2019. And so through a robust public engagement process. So that's where this line is. Because of some risks or uncertainties of the locally preferred alternative, or some new opportunities that may have come up, we've also identified yellow lines, which those are options to the locally preferred alternative that we're evaluating. And that's the main purpose of this process we're going through, is to get public input on those options and along with the locally preferred alternative. So I'll take a moment just to kind of orient people to the locally preferred alternative, and then I'll kind of click on the pros and cons to give you kind of our evaluation and assessment of locally preferred alternative, and do the same thing for each one of the design options so that everyone can see. And that's the primary way to kind of get your head around each one of the lines. So going from west to east, and this is Wilkinson Boulevard where my arrow is. So the focus of last night's conversation was about Wilkinson Boulevard the whole way out to the airport. But this entering into Center City, it comes from the median of Wilkinson Boulevard, bridging out of the median, and then going around the northern side of the I-77, I-277 interchange with a station in Wesley Heights. And then crossing over I-77 and around and through the Cedar Yards area with a station near Cedar Street. At that point, it then goes underneath Norfolk Southern Railroad through the embankment, comes back up to grade, and then integrates into Charlotte Gateway Station. Charlotte Gateway Station is a large multimodal center for folks with an Amtrak station and private development opportunities, and it's an active project that's being undertaken between NCDOT and CATS and private developers. So this is a very, very big deal for the city and for the entire community to have the Silver Line integrated into that station. And one of the main reasons that this alignment was selected. Going along parallel to Norfolk Southern, the light rail then goes across Graham Street and then parallels 11th Street and then crosses over the blue line. So there's just a note here. This map doesn't quite show all the complications of this, but there is a detail of rebuilding 11th Street. So the 11th Street that's out there today would be rebuilt closer to 277, and the Lynx Silver Line would then occupy 11th Street right away as it is today. So that's just a little nuance to understand that there's some reconstruction of 11th Street in that area to accommodate the Silver Line. The Silver Line then bridges over the Berkshire Freeway and comes down around past Central Avenue, and then north side running on the side of Independence Boulevard out to Bojangles and beyond to Matthews and other focus areas. So if you were to click on that tab of locally preferred alternative, and this is really focused on, and in this case, and just as a note, we also kind of broke this up into kind of two kind of decision areas within the focus area. There's the one which is basically how do you get around I-77, I-277 interchange. So the locally preferred alternative, which shows up in cyan, so one of the pros is that it minimizes conflict with potential development. There's a lot of development in this area. It's not 100% clear the timing of that. So one of the pros of this alignment is that it does not interact with that and doesn't impede that development from occurring. However, it's curvy. So as you can see, there's lots of curves here, and that will cause the train to run slower. There's also some concerning environmental impacts, potential environmental impacts on the western side on Wesley Heights near Bryant and Summit Street on the northern side. And it's floodplains, wetlands, streams, as well as some parks and historic resources. So there's some environmental concerns with this northern alignment. And the station at Wesley Heights is elevated. So we have a kind of a higher station than we'd like, and that's more difficult for our customers to reach. So because of some of those concerns, we identified an option, and we call that option 1A, and it's south of I-77, I-277 interchange. And one of the impetus for this option was really the relocation of this industrial use outside of Uptown. And so when that was became clear that that was going to occur, that caused us to kind of look at this other alternative, see if that had some merit. So the pros and cons of that one, from CG or Charlotte Gateway Station on, it's the same. It really deviates over here at Wilkinson Boulevard. So the pros and cons of this one, it does provide more direct route from Wilkinson into Uptown. So it's kind of a straight shot from Wilkinson Boulevard, whether you're on Wilkinson or you're on the NS adjacent option, which is we talked about last night. You're kind of a straight shot and you miss a lot of that curvature. And so that's going to allow you to have a more, a faster, more reliable train. It also may potentially encourage new development with this industrial use relocating. Perhaps there's an opportunity to redevelop that area, and the light rail can be part of that. However, one of the downsides of it is it does require that you have to get under I-277 through underneath the John Belk. So there's going to be some complexity with the project to actually get underneath the current highway. So that's just something to account. But it is a raised highway, so it's more of how you push the alignment through the embankment. So those are kind of the pros and cons of the first kind of decision area. Now I'll go to the other one. So in this area, there's not many horizontal options. The lines don't look that distinct from each other. And the real difference is more about how the vertical transitions work. And just to note, we all recognize how important it is to have a seamless transition between the Link Silver Line and the Blue Line, which is below the current grade of 11th Street. So ensuring that customers can get off either at the 9th Street station, which was built by the Blue Line, or to get off at the future station to be built by the Silver Line, that transition from the Silver Line to the Blue Line and vice versa, both horizontally and vertically, that you can go upstairs or ramps or elevators or however it works, however we come up with, that is as seamless as we can make it. So just to kind of note a couple things, some pros of this one is that it minimizes the amount of bridging required. So there's less bridge work than some of the options on the table. However, because the locally preferred alternative had the alignment at a similar elevation as 11th Street, there will be more potential interactions between vehicles, pedestrians, and the light rail along 11th Street. So if you could imagine, the light rail would be right beside 11th Street at a similar elevation. And so anytime you do that, there's opportunities to have more interactions, and that's a concern. And because of that street elevation and the crossings, it also require that the train operate more slowly. So there's some operational challenges with locally preferred alternative. Because of those operational challenges, we identified a couple different options, and there's actually some hybrid options that are kind of different variations of. So the first one, and again, it doesn't look that different on the map, but it's different and elevation wise, is that the light rail would then be on an elevated structure. So the horizontally, I mean, the plan view looks the same, but because the light rail would be on a horizontal or a flyover bridge or an elevated bridge, it would mitigate some of those operational concerns and would allow us to have faster, more reliable trains, because we would be removing a lot of those street interactions with vehicles and pedestrians. However, the overhead bridge could create a barrier. So could create a visual barrier, it could create a community barrier. So that's just something that if we chose that option, we would have to figure out the right way to treat that. And the elevation station is more difficult to reach. It's further from the blue line transferring for our passengers. So one of the bigger concerns with that is that the vertical transition is greater than the other options. So you'll be on an elevator longer, you'll have a longer stair tower to climb, and so that's a concern. Option 2B, and that is in this option, the Silver Line would go below the 11th Street elevation at a similar elevation to the Lynx Blue Line. So similar to the elevated option, which is 2A, the light rail would have faster, more reliable trains, because we have removed a lot of those cross streets and those potential interactions that would cause the light rail to operate more slowly. So we've removed some of the concerns of the locally preferred alternative, similar to 2A. For the cons, it would be, the rail corridor would be below street elevation, which could create a barrier, and that there would be a cut, and that would say there would be a open cut in the ground that would allow the light rail to operate through that area, so people will be able to walk across that transparently. And it's more complex from a rail operations, because the light rail the Silver Line could potentially intersect with the Blue Line, and so there's some very complex operational concerns that would have to be resolved if we were to choose that option, instead of crossing over it with the other two options do. From there, both these options then cross over. There's these lines don't show two different ways to do it, or they are just two different ways to do it, and we would pick one or the other. But we would then cross over the Brookshire with the station near Central Avenue, and then off onto Independence Boulevard. So now that kind of explains kind of how these options, or how this map works, and kind of the options in Center City. I'll kind of continue on down through this. And so if you would like to watch a video of kind of a description of each one of these pros and cons that we did, that's available to you if you like to refresh your memory when you're get back and thinking about it. And we'll also actually have these videos that we recorded, and you can go to our YouTube link and watch the same video with the same Q&A. So that's a benefit. But there's also below there's a comment form. So if you'd like to, we would request that you would fill out our comment form. And there's a comment form for each focus area, so that folks could provide their input. And if they might have different things in Uptown, may be different than things in Matthews, which may be different things at the airport. So we kind of ask for some more specific comments about what your priorities are in this focus area, and then an opportunity for you to provide some public comment for you to submit. And then the third tab of this online open house is the Tell Us More tab, and that is the overall project survey. And if you were to go down, click on that, this would be the high-level survey that we would request that you fill out. That would give us information on the overall benefits and your overall thoughts of the project. So that we can use that as we enter into the early scoping phase and get into more detailed decision making and more detailed design moving forward. So with that, I think we're ready to hand this over to Ajanel Poole to run us through some Q&A.
Thank you, Andy. Thank you for your presentation. Hello, everyone. Again, my name is Ajanel Poole. I am the Community and Public Relations Specialist for this project. We appreciate you taking the time to join us for this virtual public meeting tonight. I know this is a not maybe the ideal way for some of you guys to do a public meeting or a Q&A session, but as you can imagine, all of us are adapting to what is the new normal right now. So it's a bit new for all of us. So we do appreciate you being here this evening. I'm going to ask our panelists to please stay on mute unless you are answering a question. If you are a viewer and you would like to ask the project team a question, please sign into your Gmail or your YouTube account and leave your questions in the chat box on YouTube. Like Andy mentioned, I would suggest signing off of any VPN or organizational servers just to have the best connection. We will be answering questions that we received during the session and that we received previously via phone call or mail or email. We'll do our best to get through all the questions tonight. However, if we do not get through all the questions, we will answer them in a Q&A document that will go on the website. As a note, we will try to focus all of our questions on Focus 3 area tonight. And so with that, I am going to start us off with one of the previous questions we received. And I'm going to direct this to our Deputy Project Manager, Jenna. Which is, when is the Silver Line expected to open?
Thanks, Ajanel. Yeah, that's a popular question that we get. Well, CAT's goal is to move forward with the 2030 system plan, and that includes the Silver Line. So this project is very large and very complicated. There's a lot of decisions that need to be made between now and that point. And those decisions will dictate the actual timing of the delivery of the project. So we're shooting for 2030, but again, the decisions between now and that point will dictate when we actually open for operations.
Thank you. And I'm going to ask you one more question. Another frequently asked question that we tend to get is, how will this project be funded? Yeah,
that is definitely a popular question. Well, we will be developing a cost estimate as we go through pre-project development and project development phase. And he talked a little bit about the phases in his overview video. But once we have a more complete cost estimate, we will start to identify funding sources. But it's our goal to follow a very similar path as the Links Blue Line and Links Blue Line extension, which they received funding through a competitive federal funding grant program called New Starts. And we want to pursue that same funding program for the Link Silver Line. That does require federal, local, and state funding. And so on the local side, it will require a robust conversation with the public and the community about how these projects will be funded.
Thank you, Jenna. We have a question from the YouTube chat. Either you or Andy can take this one. But it says that the 11th Street plan and the 277 and 77 interchange take into any consideration the proposed I-277 reconstruction.
Yes, we have been coordinating closely with NCDOT, so we're aware of some of the planning and design work that's proceeding. So we have had the benefit of reviewing their plans, and as we're laying out the 11th Street plans, we're coordinating with the state on those two plans so that they can both move forward together.
Thank you. Another question from YouTube. Option 2B mentions the silver and blue lines intersecting. Please provide more details about that. You were already planning a transfer station there. Is that correct?
So
yeah, well, go ahead, Jenny, you got it.
I'll take it, and you can fill in. So we will definitely have a premium connection between Blue Line and Silver Line so that the rider can access our entire system. What Andy was describing in the intersection is about the tracks themselves. So whether or not those tracks are at the same grade, the same level. And that just is an operational thing. We will have a connection, a pedestrian connection, a rider connection, whether or not that the silver line is above or at the same grade as the blue line.
One thing to note, and somebody else asked a question, and since we're on the topic, so we are planning a maintenance facility with this silver line, but we also do need to be able to get vehicles between the blue and the silver line, because we are also planning to utilize the other maintenance facilities, both the south yard and the north yard, for the silver line as well. So we have to be able to make a connection between the blue and the silver, and that seems to be the most likely place to do that. So in any event, we have to have some connection between the two, whether it's for the operating revenue track or for a non-revenue.
Thank you, Andy. Another question, how would the reconstruction of 11th Street affect existing structures and businesses located east of 11th Street between 11th and I-277?
Yeah, so that's a good question. The short answer is we'll be evaluating as we continue our design process to really kind of get into the details. We're not 100% sure how that construction method will occur at this point. So as we kind of continue to work through our design, we'll be able to answer more intelligently about how those businesses will be impacted by the Silver Line. And the reconstruction of 11th Street. But that's something that we're thinking about. And as we go through the design process, we'll know a lot more about.
Thank you. Another question. When the LPA crosses 277 after 11th, would the current alignment of 12th Street or 10th Street be affected?
I think, so if I understand the question, it's, would we be rebuilding 12th Street? I think depending on the option, we may have some reconstruction of 12th Street closer down near Central Avenue, but in general, the options that we're evaluating have limited impacts on 12th Street as it relates to maybe further up past Davidson. So I think if I understand the question correctly, the impacts would mostly be limited closer down to like Jackson Central, around the interchange from 74 onto the Brookshire.
And a follow-up question to that one, the alignment on the north side of Uptown parallels 11th Street, did we explore a 12th Street alignment? Was 11th Street selected due to right-of-way issues, better accessibility for Uptown, or something else?
That might be a Jason question, since that was a system question.
Thank you, Andy. Janelle, would you mind repeating the question again?
Of course. It says the alignment on the north side of Uptown parallels 11th Street. Did you all explore a 12th Street alignment? Was 11th Street selected due to right-of-way issues, better accessibility for Uptown access, or something else?
Sure. Thank you, Janelle. So yeah, in the prior Southeast Corridor study, one of the options for Uptown access for the Southeast Corridor was along 12th Street. That was one of our initial ideas. And through the system update, there was a decision to become closer to Uptown, get closer to the Blue Line station, and 11th Street offered that opportunity to be closer Uptown, and then closer for transferability to the 9th Street station for the Blue Line.
Thank you. So we have a question about a station. I think this might be a good one for John Howard, who's leading our TOD effort, or Andy, if you want to hop back in. The question is, would the Central Avenue station be at the same level as the Central Avenue Bridge, or would it be above or below? So Andy or John, which one of you would like to take that one?
Probably a question for me. So as it stands right now, I mean, we're still at the very early stages of design. So we would be going underneath, at the early stage, going underneath the Central Avenue Bridge, making the maneuver from Independence along the Brookshire as it stands right now in our current concepts. So it would be below the elevation of Central Avenue in our conceptual view of it.
Another question, have there been any potential impacts to this project due to the budget issues with NCDOT and associated project delays?
So at this point, there have not been any delays to this Lynx Silver Line from NCDOT projects. So at this point, there have not. But moving forward, we're going to keep closely working with the state and evaluating with NCDOT. They're on our project management team, and so they can we'll be working closely with them moving forward. But we haven't experienced any of that as of yet.
Thank you. Another question, in the alternative plan, where would the Cedar stop be located?
So the alternative plan, which we call, the southern side of the interchange, would be over Moorhead Street. So it would be similarly configured to the 3rd Street station, where it's kind of at a similar elevation as the railroad, but parallel to it. And so it would be above Moorhead, right nestled up against the Norfolk Southern line that's there today.
Okay, thank you. And another station question, where will the Graham Street station be located?
The Graham Street station will be located right near Graham Street. We're still kind of working through the details of how we're kind of getting over or under Graham Street. I think the current concept has us going underneath Graham Street. So the station would be adjacent to Graham Street on the way between Graham and Charlotte Gateway Station.
Thank you, Andy. Another question. During rush hour, Blue Line trains are standing room, while 3-car trains will be used if the only point of transfer is 11th Street to 9th Street. It doesn't seem to have the capacity for southbound Silver Line. So someone wants to talk about the 3-car train plan.
So I'll take that. Yeah, we still have 11 stations along the Blue Line, the original Blue Line in the South Corridor, that need to be upgraded to 3-car platforms, but that is within our plan. And so it would be, it's expected that by the delivery of the Silver Line, all of the Blue Line platforms would be upgraded to be 3-car trains, so that we can run 3-car trains throughout our system.
Thank you, Jenna. For traffic coming inbound on Parkwood, which becomes Caldwell, can you get into Uptown via Church Street if 12th only takes you to I-277 on-ramp? And this person is referring to rendering in 2019 recommendation report.
I will thank you, Anjana. I will take a quick one for that, and then Andy and Jenna can weigh in if the thinking's different now. But back in 2019, we had a recommendation for the 11th Street option, which is it's currently under evaluation right now. And I think you might be referring to some of the renderings that are in that report. And it's my recollection that we are not changing the access of the roads in that area on 11th and 12th. So if you're coming in today along Parkwood to Caldwell, and you can access to Church Street today, then that movement will still occur. We're not proposing that change. I don't know if Andy or Jenna want to weigh in on that.
No, well, we're I agree. Our goal is to try to keep the traffic movement as similar as possible, and also in conformance with NCDOT's kind of loop study. So, I agree with your comment.
Thank you, Jason and Andy. From the center line of the rail, how much right of way will be acquired before construction?
Yeah, that's a question that we get a lot of real estate questions. And so let me just take a moment, because we've gotten a lot the last couple nights to talk about real estate. And so the real estate is really we're not really ready to acquire real estate as of yet. And so the process to get ready is really to progress the design to such a level that we really understand what the footprints of the project is needed to be. And then also to complete the environmental work required by FTA to begin to acquire real estate. So that's going to take some time for us to do all the design and environmental work to be ready to do that. And it's really kind of not a one size fits all decision, or as far as that width, it kind of depends. Are we rebuilding the road? Is there a station there? So it's kind of depends, and I don't think I can give a very simple one size fits all answer to that. It kind of depends on where you are and what's directly adjacent.
Thank you. I think we have another question. I think, Jason, this would be a good one to answer for you. Is a rail trail / greenway along the full 26-mile corridor a realistic possibility?
Thank you, Anjanelle. I think what we discovered from the south end portion of the Lynx Blue Line, how important the rail trail is to people who live around there and the development that it faces. And so we know that it's an important facility that our public has been asking for. And so we want to take every opportunity to design and develop a concept for a 26-mile long rail trail that parallels the entire light rail corridor. Now, it won't look exactly like South End. In portions, we will have potentially running along streets like in multi-use paths, taking advantage of greenways in each of the 5 jurisdictions within Uptown. And then in some places, paralleling the light rail where feasible. And so the idea that this will be a single, exactly looking the same across the whole corridor, that's probably not feasible, but a connected corridor of pedestrian and bicycle elements that are connected across multiple types of facilities is certainly feasible. And then that is the goal of that effort.
Thank you, Jason. Does CATS plan to order more S70, I'm assuming a Siemens 70 light rail vehicles for use on the Silver Line to ensure uniformity across the link system?
So that's a great question. So, uniformity is important. However, technology changes all the time. So I don't think we can say what vehicle style or manufacturer that we're going to use. However, as we begin the writing and preparing the contracts and specifications, our ability to maintain our current fleet and the new fleet is going to be key and critical. That I think that's going to be a strong criteria, but we're not going to be able to just I think pick and choose the exact manufacturer we want.
Thank you, Andy. This might be a TLD question. I keep trying to get John to answer.
Yeah, get John in here.
We'll see. It says, would the LPA take into consideration increased service staging for events if a stadium is built at that site in the future? McNish Street could be high-use station in a low-density neighborhood.
Sure, I'll take a stab at this one, and Andy, Jenna, Jason can chime in. So, as Andy stated in his presentation early on, there is a separate but connected study called the Transit-Oriented Development Study, a TOD study that will be beginning area planning around the spring of 2021. And one of our considerations will be impacts to established neighborhoods. And with that, we'll work in conjunction with the design team to figure out exactly where those staging opportunities would be. But the goal really is to not completely disrupt those types of neighborhoods if they're low density. We want to be sure that we're context sensitive and not completely change the character if it's not ready for that. So again, that work will take place again beginning in the spring, and we'll be doing area planning around these station areas about that time.
Thank you, John. I didn't know, Andy, if you wanted to add anything, or I can go to the next question. I apologize if I...
I was just going to say, I mean, I agree with everything John said. And if the question was more focused on staging for special events like Panthers games and other things, I mean, that is going to be a key thing we're going to be looking at as far as how we can best put CATS and the public in a position to provide premium service for special events. When we have crush loads on platforms, we need to get trains to the platform to move people out of uptown. That's something we're well aware of and have a lot of experience working with. So we'll be looking at that closely.
Thank you, Andy. We have time for just a few more questions. So I'll give any of our viewers who want to ask any last minute questions some time to type it in the chat box. We have a question that says, why is the silver line shown in purple? Is that because it combines an alignment from either side of uptown into one line?
I'll take this because I might have requested it to be shown in purple. So when you're looking at silver on a map, it really is just gray. So from a visual standpoint and making sure that we can see the alignment when we're looking on maps and have that contrast, we chose purple. So it's really sort of an arbitrary color, but you're correct, it does combine the southeast and west corridors into a single alignment. But yeah, the color on the maps really is not indicative of anything other than just needing to be able to see the line on our aerials.
Thank you, Jenna. And while I have you, since I look like we have got to all the questions in our chat box, do you mind, I'm going to have you close us out with one of our frequently asked questions, which is, what does the connection to the airport look like with the Link Silver Line?
Absolutely. I love this question. So it's definitely a popular question. One thing we like to think about is when we're designing projects like this, they're really a multi-generational 50 to 100 year investment. And so we need to make sure that we're building for, keeping that in mind as we're designing. So the Charlotte Airport of today is not the Charlotte Airport of 50 to 100 years from now. It's certainly not the Charlotte Airport of the future. It's growing just as our region is growing. And so one thing that we know is that it's likely that some of these terminal services will expand outward. The Silver Line, regardless, will have a premier light rail station at the airport, and it will support the airport's land use and development plans. The station will be designed so that passengers arriving by light rail will feel as if they've arrived directly at the airport, because it'll be connected to a multimodal transportation center, and it'll have extension of terminal services such as baggage check or ticketing. And then they'll be able to hop off the light rail, check their bag, get their ticket, and then hop on a people mover that will connect directly into the terminal. So basically it'll feel like you've arrived at the airport when you get to the station, because the airport will be expanding out towards the station, the light rail station.
Okay, thank you, Jenna. It seems we got a couple last minute questions, so I'm going to try to squeeze them in if we have time. Is there any preliminary thoughts on how or where the Silver Line will access the existing Blue Line? Will there need to be some sort of non-revenue segment like there is for Gold Line around the arena?
Yeah, that's one of the thoughts that we're considering is a non-revenue connection from the blue to the silver, so that we can ensure that our vehicles can transfer from one line to another and go to each maintenance facility. So we don't have anything written in stone on that, but we are evaluating different options to make that non-revenue connection.
Thank you, Andy. And this will be our last question for the evening. Are there any uptown stations being considered to house retail establishments? So, Andy, John, Jason, which one of you guys?
That's a John one for sure.
Yeah, that's a good question. So again, as we talk about market readiness for transit-oriented development, or TOD, the thing that we'll be looking for is joint use opportunities. So that's something we'll be exploring more as we get into the station area planning aspect of it, and to see where those opportunities may present themselves up and down the alignment. Ideally, we want to have a mix of uses in those structures. So yes, we will be exploring that as we go through our area planning process.
Okay, I think that brings us to a close. Thank you all for participating tonight and providing us these wonderful questions for us to answer. And thank you for sticking around to see Andy explain this segment of the corridor. A reminder that all of these public meetings have been recorded. So we've done Focus Area 1, 2, and this is Focus Area 3. Those are all on the CATS YouTube page. So you can go back and watch them all if you'd like. Hopefully you felt like tonight was valuable and a good use of time and that you've learned some stuff. Just a reminder that we'll be compiling all of the comments and questions, addressing them, and posting the responses on our website. The early scoping period ends October 14th. So this tool, this website that Andy walked through, will be live through October 14th, and you will be provided the opportunity to make additional comments or ask additional questions. The website for that interactive comment map is on the screen. It's http://ridetransit.org/linkssilverline. You can also send us an email at linkssilverline@publicinput.com, or you can give us a call at 704-336-RIDE. That's 704-336-7433. Or you can send us a letter at CATS, care of Miss Ajnal Poole, 600 East 4th Street, Charlotte, North Carolina, 28202. Thank you all for your time and focus tonight. We appreciate all of your great comments and questions this evening. Stay tuned and stay involved. Your input is critical in helping us make the right decision as we move forward. And again, you can find project updates at our website, which is ridetransit.org/linkssilverline. Thanks.